Hello and welcome back to TNN's coverage of the world's 9 best fantasy football players league. I'm your host, and this is what we have for you this week. It's now week 15 and the first round of the playoffs as teams are looking to make that playoff push or avoid the toilet bowl punishment. Commissioner Tooch will have a very special message for everyone in the playoffs starting next week. And now, here is Danny Football with his picks for week 15.
Hey, what's up, guys? World's 9 best fantasy football players expert, Danny Football here, back with another week of expert predictions. Last week, pretty good for me, going 5-1, bringing my total on the year up to a very nice 53-19. My best performance yet on a regular season. My guest, Timmy, unfortunately, did honestly not do very well last week, going 2-4, not being able to beat the expert, and actually getting all of the ones where he split with the expert incorrect. So just goes to show the expert does know a thing or two about this league. But now, it's a new week, there's a new guest, and a new chance to beat the expert. So guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, Danny Football. Thanks for having me on the show. Cubby here, owner, GM, and proud fan, really, more than anything else. Proud fan of Blood, Sweat, and Beers and the world's 9 best fantasy football players league in general. What a fantastic league we have. Always a pleasure being here, talking ball with you. You're an elite ball knower. I'm going to be honest.
Thank you.
You know your balls. And it takes a lot of guts, to get up here and talk about balls all day, all
That's
week.
true.
And so I want to thank you for that. I do have one question for you. Roughly about a week and a half ago, there was an incident in New York City. My inside league sources tell me that Danny Football was within a certain square meter radius of an alleged shooting that may or may not have happened. And I just want to know where Danny Football's sympathies lie. Or are you the Mario to his Luigi? Like, what are we doing here?
Look, Danny Football is supportive of all people, all kinds of people. We just here at TNN we only love, only express support for every single person out there, except for the bad ones. You can read into that whatever that means, but that's where Danny Football stands.
Is TNN pro or anti-Italians?
TNN supports all people of all nationalities. That's all we have to say.
That's all I needed to hear. That's all I needed to hear.
Jacob, I'm so happy to have you back here. You did go 6-0 last time, so very high expectations for your expert analysis. I thought no better way to start off the playoffs than having someone who knows how to pick them right every single time. Looking for a chance to redeem myself here, so should be a very fun week.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to getting these 4 matchups and going 10-0 on the season. I know that in the past, the picks have not been kind to me at one point, and I don't know if I still am, but I know at one point I was the lowest ranked picker in TNN history, but we're on the come up this year.
You are still close to the bottom. Yeah, currently second from the bottom, even with the perfect 6-0 this year. The only person worse off is Danny Storts.
Oh, what elite company down there. Elite
That's
ball
true.
knowers. Elite ball
That's
knowers
true.
down at the bottom of the table.
All right, first up, we have the Tex Arcana Bandits taking on Jesus Christ. It's Jay Sanborn. Bandits favor this one at 66%. We're starting off with the toilet bowl here. These matchups, not too important, but you never know who's going to get stuck running that punishment. Is it going to be anyone in here? Is it going to be Miguel after taking on that punishment right from Will? A lot of juicy storylines in the toilet bowl. Unfortunately, for all the fans at home, I do not think this game has many of those juicy storylines. The Bandits, inexplicably have just completely fallen apart this season. And it's not even like the team itself has fallen apart. They just could not find wins up until the very last week when they just absolutely exploded and they just came up a little short. Not too much you can say about that. The team has really showed up, showed out against the Bandits all year. Look, fans of the show will know that I am high on the Bandits, and I think that message has leaked to the teams in this league. Everyone's showing up, wanting to put out their best, going up against the Bandits every single week. Their points against was absurd this season. The
Oh, yeah.
team still going out there scoring very high, just could not come up with the wins. Luckily for them, though, they are going up against a very poor Jay Sanborn team. This is one of the bottom feeders in this league. I think most of the time they would have had one of the buys in the toilet bowl as one of the two worst teams. Not a lot of talent, not a lot of promise for this roster. I think at the end of the day, the Bandits, they have the talents. They showed us that they can still have the big weeks like they did last week. And unless Jay Sanborn just absolutely goes off, I think the talent is going to win out. I'm going to pick the Bandits one and done here in the toilet bowl. Grayson will not be running the beer mile. I'm going to go with the Bandits in this one.
That's some great analysis, Danny. Football. With a team like the Bandits, you really have to be concerned. Are we going to see a Florida State level collapse in the bowl game after being left
Yeah.
out of the playoffs? The Bandits did not think this was even in the realm of their possibility. They had their sights set on a championship caliber season. And like you said, they just could not get their defense right. They were
Mm-hmm.
letting up too many points against. I mean, one of the worst we've ever seen in league history in terms
Yeah.
of unluck, and luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and they weren't prepared this year. They weren't prepared to fight against those hard battles in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I do agree that they do have the better team, and they realistically they should be in the playoffs, and it's a
Yeah.
tragedy. It's a tragedy for the
It's a
league that they're
tragedy we have
not.
to have teams like Ham and Throw in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I'll say it now. This is going to be an often repeated message. The Bandits should be in the playoffs over Ham and Throw. I will leave it at that for now.
a lot of people are saying this is affirmative action in place, and that's why Hammond Throw is in the league, is in the playoffs. I mean, I don't know who made these divisions. It's a lot of things to think about,
A lot of
a
questions.
lot of questions. That being said, I think Grayson has his team, in tip top shape these past couple of weeks. I think they're gonna pull out the win here and avoid the beer mile. Grayson does not want to put on any more pounds before the wedding. I
Hmm.
can't see him looking forward to drinking 4 beers and running the mile. So I'm going with the Bandits to beat Jay Sanborn this week.
Moving on, we have Blood, Sweat, and Beers taking on the Judon Noodles. Judon Noodles currently favored in this one at 52%. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, another matchup of teams going in opposite directions, really.
Hmm.
Blood, sweat, and beers. We knew this was a rebuilding year. We weren't expecting the fact that we were 6-8 and potentially even fighting for a miracle playoff spot in the last week. Like, I mean, there's no moral victories in this league, but there were 6 victories for the Blood, Sweat, and Beers this year, and I'm okay with that. I'm good with 6 real victories for BSP. Judon Noodles, on the other hand, downward trajectory for that team. What's happening? Christian McCaffrey, is he ever gonna be that guy ever again?
Hmm.
It's tough to say. You don't come up back from injuries like that. I'm not too worried about the Noodles. I think the broth is a little too hot for them this week. They're gonna start wilting. And I'm going with blood, sweat, and beers to avoid having to run back-to-back beer miles, and avoid the punishment this year.
Yeah, this is a very intriguing matchup to me. Like you said, two teams going in very different directions. I think they're probably at about an equal place right now. And the trajectory will continue to carry them in opposite directions. But right now, they've reached that like crossing point where they're at kind of similar levels of talent. The Judon Noodles, I have been dogging on them all year from the
Mhm.
very beginning. I think I was the earliest critic of this team. Everyone was saying this team has championship aspirations. I have been calling them exactly what they are all season, which is frauds, absolute frauds on this team, left and right, from the ownership all the way down to their kicker in Jake Moody. Absolute frauds. The Judon Noodles, I think, are probably in one of the worst positions for a team in this league. They have a lot of older, aging assets, not great draft capital if you want to be a rebuilding team. And it's really only going to get worse. They don't have the young star power. I mean, they have like Garrett Wilson, but he's never really been that guy. In my personal opinion, his dynasty value very inflated relative to his actual production. Not a team that I would be very happy to own if I was Timmy. With that being said, though, they're going up against blood, sweat, and beers. A team that should have had no business even sniffing the playoffs this year. I will give you credit. This team definitely exceeded expectations, but that is only because the expectations were below 50 feet of absolute shit. This team should have the first overall pick in this draft, just based on where they were last year, the talent level on this team. If Worthy of Love and Jay Sanborn had even slightly competent ownership, their teams would have been in a better position. And Blood, Sweat, and Beers would have been in their rightful place, selecting number one overall for the second year in a row. And this team could be in really good shape if that was the case. But unfortunately, that is not the case. They greatly overperformed. I think mistakenly, I've been saying this all year, and now they're going to have a pretty high draft pick considering they're not in the playoffs. They do have those two additional draft picks, which great for them. Um, I don't know. The talent on this team, I'm just not convinced right now. They are trending up, but that is the trend. This is the matchup we have this week, not in the future. So if I was picking this matchup next year, I may have a different answer. But for now, I'm going to go with the very fraudulent, let me add one more time, Judon Noodles to pick up the win in this one.
Gotta respect the game.
The Judon Noodles are terrible, though. I do hate this pick. I would just like to put that on the record.
Heard.
Moving on, we have undefeated, never lost, taking on Ham and Throw. Undefeated, never lost, currently favorite at 54%. And let me just stop myself right there. UNL currently favored in a playoff matchup. Let's just really round of applause for undefeated, never lost. I
Breathe it
mean,
in. Breathe
did
it
we
in.
ever think we would make it to this day? If you would have asked me years ago when Miguel inexplicably started the tank before week one of the inaugural season of this league, how long it would take them to finally make it to the playoffs. I don't know if I would have said that they would make it there in the fifth year of the playoffs. So they have somewhat turned it around. Maybe there was some method to the madness all along. And they're in a very good position right now, going up against a historically weak playoff team in Ham and Throw. Some have said that Ham and Throw should not be in the playoffs. And I would agree with all of those people. This team is absolutely terrible from the top to the bottom, much like I've said with the Judon Noodles. No confidence in ownership, no confidence in the players. The only reason they're here is because they were able to beat up on the two worst teams in the league this season for a total of four matchups. Four. This Ham and Throw team has no business being here. And the only reason they even have a single shot to advance in the playoffs is because they're going up against the historic franchise that is Undefeated Never Lost. Now, I will give Undefeated Never Lost some credit. Some of their players have taken that step up this year. JSN has really emerged as one of those really good dynasty assets. I know some people were a little hesitant on him after his performance last year. They've had those big injuries this year, but I will say this. I've been picking Ham Throw for the past couple weeks, not because I like the team, but because I hated their opponents so much going up against all of the fraudulent teams in the Pac 4 division. And I'm going to affirmatively put my foot down and say no more. I will not pick Ham and Throw to win a game in these playoffs as a matter of principle and also because it is the right thing to do. I am going to go with undefeated, never lost to win their first ever playoff game. In their first ever playoff game, I think it's going to be a crowning achievement for Miguel, Danny, and Schmitz and the process that they've had throughout all these years. Undefeated, never lost. You have the endorsement from the expert, at least for this week.
That's some great analysis, Danny Football. Before we get started talking about the matchup, I have to say it's an affront to the league that both of these teams are in the playoffs. This
Yeah.
is a disgusting, disgusting matchup. This is one of the worst things I have ever laid my eyes on. No human being should be subject to watching the football we are about to see between undefeated, never lost and Ham and Throw. And I mean, no discredit to either of them. You play the people on your schedule. You can't control your schedule unless you're making the divisions, which some people did make the divisions, so I guess you can control your schedule. But it is disgrace that we're even discussing this and that we're even having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, wow, what an incredible journey for undefeated never lost. The 30 for 30 on this team is going to be magical. I cannot wait to see what TNN produces. Do I think this team is going to win it all this year? Absolutely not. Not even close. Do I think Miguel is going to blow the team up this offseason regardless of what happens? Yes, I do. And I cannot wait to watch him re-tank for another 5 years after his first taste of the playoffs. But he's here. He's made it to the dance, and that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
With Ham and Throw, I mean, you want to talk fraudulent. I know we've called Timmy fraudulent for years. To be the champion of the Pac 4 division might be the most fraudulent behavior ever. Like,
yeah,
it is. There is no one else in the league in the world other than Mike Visconti who would even be. This is a man who was built to wrestle in the mud, and he has no problem getting dirty. He has no problem with being that guy and being the villain, and he owns it. And good for him. Unfortunately, as much as I love Schmitz and Danny, in just those two guys, I no one else associated with UNL making it to my list. I think that Ham and Throw will continue his fraudulent path. He's not making it very far. He's not going to win it all this year. I'm done chaining Ham and Throw. We can put that out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
But this week, unfortunately, undefeated never lost will not taste playoff victory. They've made it to the first step of actually being invited to the dance. Unfortunately, I think they're going to stumble and fall in their first dance moves.
Next up in our marquee matchup of the week, we have Team M Vanek taking on Too Many Conks. Team M Vanek favored in this one at 61%. Jacob, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, great matchup. Great selection for the marquee matchup, especially after that trash we just had to talk about. With Team M Vanek, I mean, who can forget last year's Cinderella story? I mean, they were the darlings of the league, and they made it all the way to the championship, and it wasn't enough, but here they are. They're right back in the playoffs. Are they as good of a team as some of the other members of the league? I don't think so, but it doesn't matter. They're here. They're in the playoffs. They've earned the right to fight against their division rival. Huge division matchup here. These teams know each other. They've played twice already. They know the tendencies. They know what they like. It's going to be a brutal, brutal, hard fought match. Can't wait to watch what happens. I do think Team Van Vanek is going to pull out the victory here, in spite of leaving 20 plus points on the bench from the D line. I think that they've got enough firepower to beat too many conks, and the conks will be conked out this week.
Yeah, I like that pick here. This one is it's really interesting. We have a repeat of last week's matchup, which too many conks won to secure their own place in the playoffs, keep the Bandits out. Maybe some strategic plays by Team Vanek to let the conks in, keep a possibly more dangerous Bandits team out of the playoffs. But this one is already off to a very bad start for the conks. They had Cooper Kupp, who got 0 points on Thursday night. And I just like to return to some bad decisions made on Thursday night. Hammond throw, inexplicably, just got to keep firing random shots at Hammond throw. Inexplicably benched Fred Warner, who put up almost 20 points on his bench. I like he's supposed to be your star guy. I don't know why you're benching him here in the playoffs, but
You're getting cute in the
that's
playoffs.
that's beside the point. Team Vanek, I have full faith and confidence in them. They would never leave Fred Warner on the bench. And I think the tides may be turning here. These two teams, I think, are actually pretty evenly matched for the most part, especially with Conks in their diminished state right now with some injuries. I know the Conks got the win last week. I don't know if they have the juice to really make that push in the playoffs here. It's a team that was looking scary a couple of weeks ago, not as much now. I like the talent on Team Vanek, and I'm going to go with them to win this week, get one step closer to getting back in the championship contention. Well, Jacob, it's been great having you here. No better guest to have for the first week of the playoffs. I'm wishing you all the best of luck with your picks. Of course, not as good as me, can't be the expert, or at least not twice in one season. So it's been great having you. I look forward to having you back here next year.
Thanks for having me, Danny Football. Can't wait to be the first 10-0 person in TNN pick history on the season. Just like the Blood, Sweat, and Beers, Jacob's pick history is we're going to the moon. We're skyrocketing.
And thank you, Danny Football and guest Jacob, for those great picks. That's all we have for you this time. Be sure to tune in next week to see how things shook out. I'm your host, and this has been TNN.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell.